Welcome to the official YouTube channel for the Colin Cowherd podcast. Go on, hit the subscribe button. There you go, right down there. If you want to be among the first to hear my weekly takes, NFL, college football, more, right there. But that was kind of my takeaway on Dallas and the Clippers. It was just like home team, a lot of energy, super physical, old guys, a lot of pride. And Dallas just wasn't quite ready to play. Is that fair?
I 100% agree. I did a little instant reaction to that on my channel earlier, and that was what I led with, is that Dallas just didn't really seem ready. I thought you could tell the very first possession from both teams was the dead giveaway. First Mavericks offensive possession, Luka dribbles around on the perimeter, works through two switches, and takes a step back three. Clippers get a rebound, run out the other way. On the other end, James Harden ball screen comes screaming downhill, kick out to Paul George. He misses the three, but Kyrie Irving just is standing in the corner, and Terrence Mann just sprints right by him, grabs the offensive rebound, kicks out to Amir Coffey at the top of the key, and he hits a three. And you're like, whoa, like it's like going from chill mode to a blender on the opposite side of the floor. It's crazy the difference that it makes. And I mean, honestly, like I think that also kind of plays into what we were talking about earlier with physicality, as the league has allowed more physicality and defenses have been given more power. The home teams that are feeding off of that are benefiting from it. I think the athleticism helps as well. And I think honestly, experience helps a certain amount. I thought the Pacers game in particular, like the Pacers are the third most efficient jump shooting team in the league, according to Synergy. And the Bucks allow the fifth most jump shot attempts in the league per Synergy. That should be a matchup that favors Indiana. And
the Pacers were 0 for 10 at one point.
Yeah. Like they couldn't make anything because they're all nerved up and they're, and like one of the other things too is in a super physical environment, guess what? Jump shots are really hard to make. Like that's kind of like just the reality of that situation. But as far as the Mavericks Clippers game goes, this is the real story there. And I think this is going to be an issue that the Mavs are going to have to deal with. They, every single time down the floor, brought Luka Doncic up, got him switched onto James Harden or Paul George, and attacked him every single time. It was crazy. Now Ty Lue is famous for this. And I've seen this personally as a Lakers fan, every single time we play the Clippers, it's like, attack Austin Reeves, attack Austin Reeves, attack Austin Reeves. Like that's what they do. Ty Lue is like one of my favorite coaches in the league because he kind of has a different approach than some of the more, super fancy schematic coaches. He's very much like we're a matchup attacking team. That's what our roster is. We have a bunch of guys who can attack matchups. We're going to pick on your weakest link every single time down the floor. And literally, it was like he found out early. It's like, oh, Gafford can't guard Zubac. Let's just post him up every single time until they take him out of the game. They took Gafford out with like 8.5 minutes left in the first quarter because Zubac scored on him 3 consecutive times in the post. It's like, okay, now we're going after Luka. And they started just attacking Luka. And that's how James Harden got going. He hit 3 buckets in a row on Luka. Then he got in a rhythm, and then he started hitting the tougher shots. Paul George started attacking him. Like the real issue there is like Luka during the regular season can kind of float through, but he's going to have to find a way to counter that. There's an easy schematic counter. They need to have Luka hedge and recover. We won't get into it, but it's a schematic counter they can do to protect Luka in that situation. But Luka's going to have to embrace that defensive responsibility because the Clippers will not stop going at him in this series.
Well, and the Clippers are interesting. Sometimes, we have questions about Kawhi. I never question Ty Lue. I love Paul George, but there's a lot of dudes here. I mean, at his best, Westbrook off the bench, Harden, Terrence Mann, Zubac, Kawhi, Paul George. Like, let's not kid ourselves here. It's one of the best rosters in the league. There's really good players. They have size. They have experience. Now, it's a lot of odd players, enigmatic players like Harden and Russ in the postseason. Kawhi Leonard's like nonverbal. It's an odd roster. But if you start stacking up 0 to 7, you don't get to Westbrook at 6 and 7 very much in the NBA. Like, again, Dallas's third best player is arguably PJ Washington. Good player. I mean, not knocking him. Nice player. Kentucky kid. Really nice player. I think Kentucky. But it's like, okay, you start going, Paul George is your third best. Like, Paul's really, he's a 7, 8-time All-Star, whatever he is. So as I watched that series, I'm like, last year I bought into the Clippers hard. And I just went, it was a facial. I really bought into them. But they hadn't played a lot together. It was weird. All right, the 82-game NBA preseason is in the books. Now it's time for real basketball, the playoffs. Don't miss out any of the playoff action. DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. From the play-in tournament through the finals, DraftKings Sportsbook has you covered. Same game parlays, live betting, odds boosts, and so much more. All you have to do, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. You know the drill. It takes about 90 seconds. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Put in the code Colin, COLI, and new customers bet $5. That's it, $5 to get $200 in bonus bets, and you get it instantly. You can't lose. Code is Colin, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours.
When are we going to have a conversation about I have a couple of stars and then a bunch of specialists? Because that was literally what Houston was with Chris Paul and James Harden.
Yeah.
And it had a certain ceiling. And now we're seeing it with no Kyrie question. And Luka, where it's like the ball, like you can literally see Kleba like catch on the wing and be like, am I supposed to shoot it? Like, and it's one of those things where I think if Dallas does lose this series, it's time to start having a conversation about the specialist in this super athletic, spread out, speed based game. You've got to have 5 guys who can play offense. And that's what Denver has.
Yeah.
Denver has 5 guys that could play offense. Golden State had 5 guys that could play offense. Like that to me is a really interesting kind of like subplot here is the Clippers just got the ball out of Kyrie and Luka's hands and those other guys couldn't score.
Well, and Jason, this is why it's so important. This is why I always drag Melo. If you don't defend, then I am forced to put people on the floor that are excellent defenders and are limited.
Yes.
So Kyrie doesn't defend. Luka's better at defending. But you're forcing me now to acquire people to protect you. The greatness of the Warriors was Draymond was a great defender, but a catalyst offensively. And Clay was a great defender, but the best catch and shoot guy maybe a decade. So they're guys that were great defensively, where you had to protect Steph. You didn't have a lot of size. They ended up being really valuable offensive pieces. And by the way, that's rare. If Ben Wallace could have shot a 3, he would have been, an all-time player. He's instead of 12 a game, he's 22. So it's hard to find those guys. But I find that when you have elite offensive players, that's why the pairing of Luka and Kyrie is a bit problematic. Oh, I've got to get a rim protector. Well, he can't score. Well, I still have to have it. And, it's one of the reasons I do think the Lakers have a lot of promise, because Reeves, D'Lo, LeBron, AD, they can all score, right? So you can, and it does matter. I feel like the Mavs are lopsided. It's almost like when Tennessee had Ryan Tannehill, like we're going to have to be a little lopsided on the run. We've got a ceiling at quarterback. They ended up as a number 1 seed one year. But when they got to the playoffs and you play better teams and better coaches, they expose it. And so I think what the Clippers did, they exposed the Mavericks. You got 2 guys on the floor that are just not offensive players. But if you don't have them, Kyrie is not even accountable sometimes defensively. So I think that's the downside to having highly offensive players. Most great offensive players do commit in their prime years. They get tired of defense or worn down, but they commit to it for like Kobe for an 8 to 9 year period. And then at the beginning, you're not very good. At the end, you're not very good. But I felt like watching Dallas, they're a little lopsided.
Mike Malone has said before, specialists can't play in the playoffs. It's been something that they're the easiest guys to target in various ways. And it's interesting because PJ Washington and Maxi Kleba together in the front court at the 4-5 has been my favorite Dallas look since the trade deadline. I actually like it when they go no center. They're more athletic. They have more ability to fly around in rotation. But to your point, that ended up being a major offensive issue in this particular matchup today. And PJ Washington, I agree with you. I think he's probably their 3rd best player, and he has more offensive pop in general, but he's like a low 30s catch and shoot guy. So generally speaking, as long as you can kind of shade the floor in a certain way to where he's catching on the perimeter, you can close out short and you have a better chance to contain that. Essentially they're actually the opposite of the Suns in the sense that the Suns were no, we're going to have really good off-ball offensive talent. And they have that. So Minnesota's okay, we're just going to stay home off the ball and make Kevin Durant and Devin Booker and Bradley Beal play 1-on-1 and 2-on-2 in ball screens and make them make tough shots over our elite perimeter defenders and Rudy Gobert. The Clippers are like, the Mavs are the exact opposite. They don't have great off-ball offensive talent, but they've got good defenders in their off-ball players. So the Clippers are like, we're just going to throw the kitchen sink at Luka and Kyrie and make these guys score. And so what you're seeing is the problem with both, because the Suns can't contend physically in a lot of certain matchups, and the Mavs can't score against these certain types of matchups. And so it's kind of just an interesting conversation about team building. Like, you need, like, Aaron Gordon's an interesting example. Aaron Gordon is a Swiss Army knife in his own way.
Yeah.
He can attack mismatches in the post. He can guard LeBron James, Jimmy Butler, Kevin Durant, those guys credibly. But at the same time, he's like a really functional piece in their 5-out offense. So like, he's a super versatile basketball player. But if you dive into it, you're like, he's a iffy jump shooter. He's not the most efficient guy in this spot, blah, blah, blah. Like, but it's like, because his specific skill set kind of fits into what Denver needs him to do, super valuable. And so I think it's just an interesting conversation about team building.
Well, and what's interesting with him is, much like Draymond, you don't have to create offense for Draymond. He sort of creates his own rebounding, screening. With Gordon, you wouldn't want another shooter. KCP shoots, Murray shoots, Porter from the corner shoots, Jokic. I don't need to design more plays. I don't need that. He's a perfect player. When you had Steph, Clay, and Durant, I don't need another guy to have to dial up shots to. Draymond will give me 7, 13 rebounds, 11 assists. The great teams all have that guy. Like, he'll give you 11, but he's totally Rodman with the Bulls, totally prideful in being the tough guy, the bouncer at the bar, the ugly player, the on-the-floor guy, and takes incredible pride in it. And I think that's Gordon.